All right, welcome back to the Unbridled Living in Costa Rica podcast. Hey, it's the only channel where you get the good, the bad, and the ugly, the whole truth about living in Costa Rica. And that's simply because we don't have anything to sell you, no product and services. We really just like to kind of share our perspective so that you don't lose thousands upon thousands of dollars and you can find your slice of paradise. Today, we're going to be talking about buying property. What are some of those common mistakes, pitfalls that I see so many people make when they come to Costa Rica? Should you use a realtor? Should you not use a realtor? Where can you get the best property deals at? We're going to be talking about all of that and answering all of your questions while we're live. So do me a favor, make sure you like, comment, engage, share so that you can help support us in a great way. Hey, before we get started, if this is your first time here, well, heck, I'm Alan, and that's my wonderful co-host,
Rebecca.
How long have we been in Costa Rica?
11 years.
11 years. How many places have we lived at in 11 years?
I think like 25.
Not just one place? You mean we didn't just come down here? And we lived in a ton of places, and we really just had a lot of fun. It was intentional. We wanted to see what it was like all over Costa Rica. So, heck, we really have a lot of fun, and we just have a lot of fun sharing our perspective. Keep in mind, we're sharing our perspective. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. You have your perspective, but we like to share. So, hey, before we get started, what's been happening on the Off-Grid Homestead?
It was Christmas.
It was Christmas, and man, I got up early, couldn't wait to open up my Christmas present. I must have been on the naughty list because she didn't get me nothing.
You didn't like that coal?
I didn't. Well, I did use to cook some fish. And look, to make matters worse, take a look right there. Take a look right. She hit me over the head with a pot.
That's what you get for not liking the coal.
And I'm telling you, life is tough. Hey, so good evening, everybody. So glad to see you all. You know, on the Off-Grid Homestead, it was Christmas. Really didn't do a whole lot. We're still nesting, putting things away.
We did a lot of cleaning and
a lot of cleaning, huh?
Putting in boxes and opening boxes and saying, why have we saved this and toted this around for so many years? Throw it in the trash.
We have done quite a bit, but I did buy myself a Christmas present. Maybe I'll show you guys something. Well, I bought us a Christmas present. A lot of you people don't know this about me, but I'm a certified personal trainer. I used to be a full-time gym manager and personal trainer, and I've trained lots of beautiful people. And they started off ugly, and they became beautiful. Anyway,
are you talking about me?
No. No, I wouldn't talk behind. I would wait till about talking behind your back.
That's kind of how we met.
Yeah, we that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother story. Woman chased me down. Anyway, but I used to go at the gym all the time to train and exercise. I'm a health nut, and so once we got moved in here, I actually bought a gym and I put it over at the other place in the barn so that I can start working out. So man, look out! I'm gonna be looking like the Hulk in about 90 days. No, I like to just be healthy. We like to stay in shape. So anyway, let's get to talking about real estate. Okay. Now, before I get started, as we talk about buying property in Costa Rica, because look, most of you guys are at some point in time, you probably are going to be buying property in Costa Rica. And now some people come over here with the intent that, hey, they just not going to buy, they're just going to rent. And you can do that. And that is one good option, okay? Keep in mind, though, when you're renting, you never can really control your environment. And when you can control your environment, man, that's when it's like heaven on earth in Costa Rica, in my opinion, okay?
Even unless you can buy a big piece of property, though, you still may not be able to totally control, like, your neighbors.
Right. Because, we rented all over them. We always had neighbors next to us, and
we always had small pieces and neighbors right.
And it's hard to find a big piece of property to rent. Those are just not hardly out there.
They are out there.
They're out there, and those are usually going to be the ones that are going to be expensive because of gringo bought it, didn't like Costa Rica, left, and now they're trying to rent it. So
or locals that like older people's forms that maybe they've passed away or they've moved in with their kids. I'll see like the whole finca for rent.
Right. And so they're out there. So anyway, but I always say, I was just kind of got sidetracked looking at some of these comments. But anyway, when you come to Costa Rica, we're going to be talking about a lot of the mistakes that people make. But before I get into all of that stuff, I actually did a very, very detailed video on the due diligence process when you actually find a property and the stuff that you need to know before actually buying it. Now, I put a link in the description so you can go watch that. And I did that with the only honest attorney I've been able to find in 11 years here, okay? And that's Christina with Blue Zone Legal. So you want to be sure to click that link. You can download her information. Be sure to tell her that I sent you, okay, or you heard about her from our channel.
Well, with Christina, it's not just that she's honest. She's so knowledgeable.
She's extremely knowledgeable.
Because we've run across a few people that have been helpful, and they weren't out to get us or anything, but they didn't have the knowledge that Christina has. In fact, we were here almost 10 years before we heard about the water letter. And we've almost bought one property and did buy another. And we had never heard about the water letter that's required. So, and pigs, I hope your cornbread turns out good. Eat a slice for me. I love cornbread, especially some crispy cornbread. Crunched up, squished up in a bowl with some milk.
Okay. So anyway, now I'm looking at some good comments here, and I'm going to come to them. Okay. So let's look at a couple of things. Okay. So now, first off, I always say that, in my honest opinion, based on all of our experience, based on what I've seen so many people, because here is a hard fact. Write this down. More people that come to Costa Rica leave than actually stay. And why is that? Well, that's because most people have been sold Costa Rica. Costa Rica is just not for everybody. Costa Rica almost was not for me because, man, it's hard to adjust. And I'm the kind of guy that I'm extremely adjustable. But my morals and my standards are way, way up here. And I just have a hard time living anywhere where there's so many crooked people. Now, there's some really, really good people in Costa Rica. Not everybody's crooked, okay? So I don't want to make it sound like every tickle's out to get you. But it sure feels like that when you're coming here. So you want to always be, I'm just very, very trustworthy.
And I always say it's because of what you have to deal with. You've had to deal with buying a vehicle, having the vehicle repaired. You've had to deal with buying materials, buying property, working out the deals with whatever houses we rented. So you had to deal with a lot more people having to do with money.
That's right.
I just go to the market,
smile, wave,
and I love it. Nobody ever does anything. I've even been stopped by the cop, and my license was expired in the United States, and he was like, "Okay, you need, when you go back, you need to get that fixed." Whereas you wouldn't even do anything wrong, and they gave you a ticket.
That's right.
So anyway, I'm just saying, to me, there are way more friendly, helpful, just loving, God-fearing people here that I've met than, but I don't have to deal with.
And Rebecca's got a good point. If you're not having to deal with money, you're probably not going to run into some of the issues I've run into. Mm-hmm. But when you come here, you're going to be spending money. And
but if you're having to get a lawyer, buy a house.
Well, look, if you're going to spend money, it's kind of like throwing chum in the water. The sharks go, Gringo got money, Gringo got money. So you just got to be, you got to be careful. So anyway, now we was talking about Christina, and JR asked a question. So it says, doesn't Christina only handle high-end properties? No, not at all. Christina will handle anybody and everybody. She's extremely good. She has a great legal team behind her. So she's not just trying to do it by herself. So maybe you're thinking of someone else. But Christina is extremely honest, extremely knowledgeable. And hey, it's been the only. Well, no, I've actually had when I bought a small piece of property. There was one.
That's what I was thinking of, that lady.
She was honest, but couldn't speak a word of English, and so it made it difficult for me.
And
Christina,
she didn't know about she didn't tell us about the water letter.
Yeah, she didn't tell us about some very important things, that I needed to know about. So anyway, Randy does say that, hey, he's losing audio, and I don't know if that's just on our side or his side. So you guys let me know if you're losing any audio or not, okay? So we can make sure that we're not having an issue over here, okay? So anyway, whenever I always say that if you're in Costa Rica, coming to Costa Rica, I highly, highly, highly suggest always wait a minimum of at least 1 year before you buy a piece of property, okay? You need to see if you're actually going to like it, because the big mistake that I see, and the most common mistake I see, people come to Costa Rica, they're all excited about it. They're touring, they're visiting. They fall in love with Costa Rica, immediately buy a piece of property, and after being here less than 1 year, they're like, oh man, this sucks. Now, I will say, there's one caveat or one exception to that rule. I'm going to talk about that in a moment, okay? But I highly suggest, and I would tell anybody, don't buy a house, wait at least a year, 2 years if you can, travel around, check out, and see the area before you actually buy a piece of property. Because this is what happens. You see a piece of property, and it's like, oh man, you like it, and the realtor's like, you better buy it. This one's going to go fast. It's going to go fast. Well, they're lying, okay? Now, could it go fast? It's possible, but almost everything in Costa Rica is for sale. So slow down, take a breath, take your time, because you've got plenty of time to check out that property.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, like, before we moved, I found this piece of property that I was in love with. I mean, as far as the altitude seemed right, it was, close to what seemed like a city. Granted, I'd not ever been here. This is just information from the internet. And it was, I think, $950 a month. It kind of had a Oriental
Thai
kind of vibe. Anyway, I wanted it so badly. Well, we couldn't get it because it wasn't going to be available. It was just to rent, okay? And it wasn't going to be available till like after we were here for a little while, I think a couple of months. So we found a different place. Okay, so when we got here, we took a drive down the mountain and went to see the property. And
keep in mind, let me pause. It wasn't all the way at the bottom of the mountain. It was kind of halfway up the mountain. So you're thinking it's going to be cool.
It was a decent altitude, I thought. Yeah, and so I was so glad that it was not available, because I did not like the temperature. It was way too hot. It was surrounded too much by jungle, in that there were mosquitoes everywhere because it was so dense, and it didn't look like the pictures. Okay, I mean, it was close, but it was way further from town than I thought, because on these roads, even though to go 10 miles might take you what?
It can take you a
long time because of the
rough the road
is, the terrain and stuff like that. So anyway, from that, I would say use Airbnb, because that's the easiest or a similar type
easiest way to go from place to place, checking out
to try it out
places.
Because you don't have to sign a lease. You can do it for a month at a time, or even 2 months at a time, but then there's no real lease to it. And after experiencing the higher altitudes of San Vito, I was like, I don't want to be any lower than this, and thank God that place was not available. So that's a long story, but
yeah, that was a long story for you. So the point is, and there are lots of real estate sites out there, okay? And unfortunately, you have to understand that realtors are going to work on commission. And unfortunately, we just live in a world where people are just not honest, and they could care less. After 11 years, I found one good realtor, and I interviewed her, and then she disappeared on me. And I'm like, doggone it, man. I had one good realtor, and she disappeared.
She seemed so reliable.
I know she seemed so reliable, and then disappeared on me.
Yeah, that was a shock.
But my point is, if you could deal with realtors. Now, if you deal with realtors, I don't have the official stats, but I'm going to say 99% of the time you're going to pay too much. Too much, okay? Now, and you got to understand, they're trying to work on commission. So a person asked a question here, and I'm going to bring it up real quick, okay?
And while he's doing that, you got to realize that a lot of foreigners, a lot of expats move here and then move back or move elsewhere. So that's probably what happened to the realtor. She probably went back home or whatever. So.
Yeah. So anyway, Adam asked, in your opinion, is there that much money to be saved if you go to the trouble of avoiding a realtor? Absolutely, Adam. Okay. Now look, so let's just quickly talk about the pros and cons of using a realtor. Okay. The pros: if you use a realtor, you don't have to look for property because this realtor has already found the property, and if they're doing their job, they've already made sure that it does have a title on it, and it supposedly is a clean property ready to sell. Okay. And so in most cases, they've done a lot of legwork for you. They do deserve the commission. Okay. Let me say that. But oftentimes a realtor can find a piece of property that's going to be cheap. And it happens where, a property's for sale. Maybe it's $30,000. They're like, I can get you $100,000 for it. Okay. Or maybe even a big realtor firm might buy that property for $30,000, knowing they can sell it for $100,000, flip it, and just really make some money. So you have to understand that in Costa Rica, everything is for sale. And if you will take your time and knock on doors, I needed a small piece of property, and most places, the smallest piece of property you can buy is 200 square meters. Okay. So I found so I was going to find this piece. It was a little bitty old town. And I told myself, and I knew where I was going at, and the values of the property very, very cheap. I said, I'm not going to pay more than 1 million colones for this piece of property. Everybody told me there ain't no way it's possible. No, I said, I know it's possible. I've been here. Okay. 1 million colones at that time was $1,600. So you stop and ask yourself, oh, come on, Alan, ain't no way you're lying. No way you're going to spend $1,600 for a 200 square meter piece of property. Well, I started knocking on doors, and guess what? First guy, he couldn't wait to sell me the property. After I did my due diligence on it, found out he doesn't even own the property. He was squatting on the property. He was more than glad to sell me a part of the property he was squatting on, okay? But then he had a girlfriend who did own property, did have a plat, and so she did own the property, and she sold me a 200 square meter piece of property for 1 million colones. Now, how is that possible, Alan? That's because a lot of people in Costa Rica are land rich and money poor. They don't have money, but they've got land that they've inherited or whatever, and they would gladly sell you a small piece of property. Now, it's a lot harder to find a hectare, and I always say, hey, try to buy at least 1 hectare. A hectare is almost 2.5 acres. 2.5 acres, you could literally be self-sustainable if you wanted to, okay? And I always say, if you're going to buy raw land, buy a hectare and make sure it has water on the property. Now you're golden. It don't get any better than that, okay? So if you can find a hectare in the forest with water on it, that's great. And you can find those. Now, you might have to be in a remote area, and it doesn't have to be that remote like I am, but you can find those pieces of property. A hectare, easy for 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, whereas you see a lot of times this thing is 100, 200. No, you find a place in the forest. It might be, you might need 4x4 to get there, but hey, you can find property. So it depends on what you're looking for. Okay. So that's how you can find really good deals. You want good deals? Be patient, knock on doors, and you'll find some amazing deals. Go to the bank. You go to the bank, you can find some phenomenal deals because banks have a lot of repo property. So yes, Adam, in my opinion, you can save a fortune, because unfortunately there are a few good, honest realtors, hard to find. They're all looking to try to sell you. My budget's $200,000. They're gonna always, oh well, here's one that's $250,000. I know you can scrape up $50,000 more. Always gonna push your limit because the bigger the sale, the bigger the commission. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Adam. Okay. And
realtors here do not have to be licensed. Is that still true?
No, Rebecca brought up a point. In Costa Rica, if I wake up tomorrow and want to be a realtor, I can. Okay. Now, while they're trying to make it a little more stringent, there's nobody enforcing that. Okay. So anybody can wake up and be a realtor. Okay, so it's important that you do know that. Okay, now before I get going, so my point is I wouldn't use a realtor. Now, what I would do is I might use a realtor just to kind of, I would look at different real estate sites and see what prices are. Now wait, before I'm getting ahead of myself. I said always, if you can handle it, 1 year before you ever buy a piece of property, there is one caveat, one exception to that rule. Okay, it never fails. Somebody comes down here and is like, nope, I want to buy, and I'm buying now. And they'll contact me and I say, look, I highly advise you not to buy, but if you're going to buy, what about this? So I got a client who's actually asked me to come by. He's only been here a couple of weeks, but he wants to buy. He's found him a great deal, and he's called me up and says, Alan, would you do a house inspection for me, property inspection? Would you come check it out? So talk to him. The first thing I told him, I said, hey, look, I highly advise you not to buy, but there is one caveat, and that is if you happen to be in a hot spot. There's a few hot spots that was kind of hard to find. For example, Uvita right now is a hot spot. No idea why. People are marketing Uvita, and so a lot of people are moving to Uvita. There's nothing there but a piece of dirt that looks like a whale's tail, and it's like, get a view to the whale's tail. There's nothing there. But because it's a hot spot, a lot of people are buying, and in the last couple of years, a lot of expats have bought, and then after they bought, through all the emotional buying and excitement, after a year, they're like, crap, there ain't nothing here. I got to drive 2 hours to go to the blah, blah, blah.
It's far from the airport.
And
there's nothing to do other than go to the
And so
beach.
in a year's time, they're selling. So if you happen to be in a hot spot, well, this person is in a hot spot, okay? And it happens to be in a hot spot with a few tourists that go to a very popular place. So that's the caveat is if you're in a hot spot, you could buy it. And if you don't like it, well, the odds are is that you might be able to turn it over faster than anywhere else in Costa Rica. Doesn't mean you will. It's easy to buy property in Costa Rica. Very, very hard to sell. But if you're in a hot spot and if you got some sort of tourism in that area, then you could at least make money off your property by doing an Airbnb, by renting. So ask yourself, okay, I know Alan said don't buy for a year, but man, I'm going to buy. Well, ask yourself, if you don't like it, can you sell it quickly? No, you can't, okay? But if you can't sell it quickly, can you Airbnb it? Because there's tourism in the area, you can make money off of it. Most places you can't, but there are a couple of rare places that's close to the airport, close to a tourism, something like that, okay? So you definitely get someone to inspect. And look, I'm not promoting. I hardly ever go out to inspect a place. I love to help people. But look, guy knows me. He calls me, Alan, would you come out and inspect if you got time? And I said, I hardly ever do it, but if I got time, I will. I happen to have time, so I'm going to go and inspect it. I can't wait to go check it out and give him some good advice as whether it's good, bad, or ugly, okay? But that's it. But anyway, so that's one of the exceptions to the rule.
And we've lived in that area, so we kind of know that area.
Yeah, we've lived in that area, so I know that area like the back of my hand, okay? So, Randy asked a question because we were talking about banks. Do they have a list of repos? Yes, they do. And matter of fact, when you walk in a bank, they usually have a television screen, and while you're sitting there for 2 hours waiting to deposit your money, which normally takes 5 minutes in the United States, you can watch the repos, and you can be seeing these repos and there's prices, and you find something that so you'd have an idea, so you could take a look at.
Wouldn't you agree that if money is not an issue, like if you're not penny pinching, like we are most of the time, it is a good idea to use a realtor and use more than one realtor because of the would they do know if they are a reputable one?
It's so hard to find a realtor. So if I wasn't penny pinching, I
think I would. They do a service that is valuable that you end up having to do yourself.
The price. Now, okay, let's put it this way. It wouldn't hurt to check out a couple of different realtors because you might look up. There's always fire sales, always someone that's in a hurry to sell. And so that property might have been listed, let's say $500,000. And now that someone's ready, matter of fact, I looked at a piece of property today. It looks like a great piece of property. It's in a very, very remote place. The guy claims he paid $40,000 for the property itself, which is almost a hectare. Claims he put $150,000 into what looks very much like a tree house, 3-story type tree house setting. Beautiful looking little piece of property, okay? But he's selling it for $69,000. So he's taking a loss on it, according to what he says. I looked at it, and if it were me, and if I wanted to live there, I would definitely pay $70,000 for that piece of property, just like that, okay? And he just put it on the market yesterday. If you're interested in that, contact me. I'll send you a link to that piece of property, okay? But anyway.
It's in the middle of nowhere.
It is in the middle of nowhere. So it would take somebody to go out there and realize you're going to have 4x4 to get there. It is in the middle of nowhere, but that's what some people are looking for. Doesn't have electricity, so you'd have to put up solar, you know. So anyway, but you can't, my point is you can find, I'm not trying to sell this property. My point is you can find fire sales. And a lot of times realtors will have fire sales. So there are a few times when I would use a realtor, and because I might look up and find a fire sale.
Can you, like, let's say you're interested in a piece of property, can you contact more than one realtor to like talk to the owner for you, or to be the in-between and see which one?
I don't think so. It's not like the United States where they share stuff and share percentages. So, you know, Costa Rica is very different, but I honestly couldn't answer that question. Okay. So anyway, now, okay, lots of good questions here. So let me quickly go through some of these things here, and I'm going to answer some of those questions. So anyway, let's talk about avoiding some of the pitfalls. A lot of people, you know, I always say wait, okay, but a lot of people will come down here and they end up buying on emotion. So they're a tourist, and here's what happens. Here's what happens. You're a tourist, you fall in love, and the Ticos, they all want to be friends with you. All rubbing, oh man, yeah, he knows a little English. And I got a beautiful piece of property, most beautiful property in Costa Rica. You got to come see it. You got to come see it. And he will badger you until you come and see it. And it might be pretty. And guess what? You might fall in love with it. And he's telling you this super deal. And then before you know it, I see it happen too many times. People are buying it. They don't even know. They haven't done their due diligence. Don't know anything. And they're just trusting the guy. He's so friendly. Send him money. Guess what? Wasn't his property. It was someone else's. He sold you someone else's property. So now you've done wired him money. You know, so that kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
And look, you're like, well, wait, didn't you go to a lawyer? Yeah, but he was working cahoots with a lawyer. That kind of stuff happens in Costa Rica. So don't ever, you know, here's the important thing. Never buy a piece of property on emotion. Be willing to walk away. Always be willing to walk away.
And realize that it's not like the United States. Somebody could get in real trouble in the U.S. if, you know, have a lawsuit or whatever charges filed if they tried to sell someone else's property, or didn't fully disclose some issues. You know, in the U.S. that is a law, and you have to take your property back if you've not fully disclosed. I forget what the rules are and everything, but just like Pura Vida is kind of a you know, the slogan, if you're in the market for housing, for property, buyer beware.
Buyer beware.
Because there are laws, but they're not enforced.
Yeah.
And there's no way to enforce them. I mean, it could take you 10, 20 years before a case
you give
goes
up on
to
it.
court.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Sarong brings up a good comment. Okay. Most places in Costa Rica are not listed through realtors. Okay. And she's absolutely right. And let me tell you why. Even the Ticos don't trust realtors, and they don't want to give up that 4 or 5 or 6% commission to a realtor. Okay. So most places are not through a realtor. So you can, I mean, you'll see signs all over the place. And so if you find a beautiful place, call. Get a friend to call. Now, this is real important. Okay. Real important. Listen close. Because something just came up. If you find a piece of property and you call, they're going to know that you're a gringo. And the price is going to be 2 to 3 times higher. Okay. So I always tell people, All right. We just came back. We was buffering for a moment. Starlink updated. Anyway, if you are serious and you find you a piece of property that you're willing to buy, what you want to do is you want to contact me. I have he's my best friend in Costa Rica. He was in the United States for like 12, 13 years. Anyway, speaks extremely good English. Anytime I get ready to buy something, I have him call. Service he provides for other people. So if you want to save, whether you're buying a car, you're buying a piece of property, you're renting a house, this guy can save you a fortune, okay? Because I have literally called on this lot, and when I called the lot, it was just a small lot that was empty, and they were subdividing to put houses on. Called, and they were selling it for 7 million colones, about $14,000 for that lot. I called, and a few days later, and they would sell it to me for 8 million colones. So I was losing $2,000 at that particular time, the exchange rate, because I was gringo. Okay, so he got the original price when I called. It went up. Okay, it didn't go up as high as I had expected, but it went up just like that. So hey, if you're serious about buying them, you find 2 or 3 properties, you're serious. You're like, okay, I'm going to buy one of these. You want to make sure to contact me. I'll get you in touch with this guy. You can save you a lot of money. Hey, you'll pay a small fee, but I can guarantee the fee that you're going to pay is going to be way, way cheaper than what you would pay if you tried to buy it yourself. Okay, so anyway, now a lot of people, first-time visitors will buy a piece of property. Big, big, big mistake. Number 2, never, did I say never? Never send a Tico. Never send anybody money. Never. Always use an escrow service, okay? So you make a deal with somebody, and, look, people are going to pressure you. They're going to be like, okay, this is going to go. Put 10% down on it right now. It's a good faith deposit, and I'll hold it for you. Because I got 2 or 3 people looking at it right now. Put a 10% deposit. You'll never hear from that person again. Always, always use an escrow service. Get an attorney involved, escrow service. That way, after you do your due diligence, you got someone like me to go and inspect the property, tell you whether it's a good property. Because look, I'll inspect not just houses, I'll inspect the property. I'll tell you whether this is good property, bad property, look at the border, property lines, all that good stuff, okay? So anyway, if I got time, I'm not promoting myself. I don't sell anything, okay? But you need to have somebody that's been here look at that property and give you some advice on it. Because you might be buying a piece of property that's going to have a landslide in a year or 2. So it's real, real important. Never, ever, ever send anybody money using escrow service, okay? Understand that these Ticos are trying to be your friend. You're going to end up in this revolving circle because he's going to sell you a piece of property. He's going to recommend a realtor. That realtor is going to recommend their attorney friend. And before you know it, you're in this circle of everybody that's connected, and everybody's going to get a piece of the pie until that pie is all gone and you have paid way, way too much for that property, okay? So those are just some common sense things that you're unaware of that I want to help you with, okay?
Yeah. And I don't know if this is still common now, but it was 10 years ago and before. People were selling in advance in gated communities, like a lot.
They're pre-selling lots.
Yeah, pre-selling lots. And we've seen them. They're like ghost towns now, but they have these gorgeous entrances and landscaping in the front. And of course, the road barely goes in and then there's nothing. And so they're selling you the future and they run off. A lot of that was gringos.
Yeah. Now that
was not
Ticos. That was all gringos, okay? And that happened years ago. And
I don't think that happens too much anymore, but still beware.
Yeah, be very, very careful because you do have to understand that anytime someone's trying to pre-sell a development or anything like that, you have no recourse. They could sell all that stuff and take off. You've got zero recourse. You'll lose money. Be very, very careful. Now, JR has a very good question here and says, what office do you go to determine the lawful owner of the property? So Costa Rica has a national registry. Every piece of property in Costa Rica is listed there. Matter of fact, the National Registry actually has more land listed on it than square meters in Costa Rica. that tells you how much property has been sold. More property has been sold than Costa Rica actually has in land mass. Okay, so, but you can actually, if you get the, and in the United States, we call it a plat. You have a plat, and there's a plat number, and the plat shows you the outline of the property. In Costa Rica, they call it a plano. Okay, so if you on the plano, there's a number on there, and with that number, then you can determine the actual owner, the lawful owner of that property, and a little bit of history, not much. Okay, so you can go to Google and just type in National Registry of Costa Rica, land registry, and you can find that website. You can create an account and get that info. I just use an attorney and say, hey, tell me who owns this land, okay, or that kind of stuff. So anyway, now Shannon asked a good question. What about buying land and building something on it? Are building codes even existent? Unfortunately, there are some zoning stuff in Costa Rica. Not a whole lot enforced, but that's enforced more than building codes. While there are supposed building codes, what happens is that in most cases, when you get ready to build something, you have to hire an architect. The architect is the one that gets all of the permits. He is supposed to inspect it. Well, most of the time, the architect never shows up, or he might be there once a couple of weeks or once a month. And so a lot of things aren't happening. And if something does get built wrong, the contractor, either their buddies or the contractor, slides them a little money and it gets slipped out of the door. So I just got through helping, one house get built, and we made sure it was built beautiful. And all along the process, it did have a good builder. But as we were going through the process, I'd say, hey, what's happening here? What's happening here? What's happening here? And I was able to stop a lot of mistakes. I wasn't, the guy couldn't afford to have me there 24/7, but I was there every single week for a couple of days a week, and I was able to make sure he had a great build. And boy, look, by the time we got done with it, he had a great build. So there's a lot of things. There are building codes. The problem is they're not enforced. So I hope that answers your question, Shannon. Okay. So I'm gonna go through here and.
Which is good if you know how to build it yourself to code, like we've done. You know how to build it. But if you don't know all of that and you're having to trust someone else to build it, it's kind of scary.
It can be very scary. There's been so many building nightmares. Okay. Matter of fact, when I did that humongous job in Jaco, did a huge job in Jaco, and when I got on the site, the guy had already spent over $100,000 on the build, and he was building a 2-story place. And I got there, and it had come to a halt, and I got there and inspected the place. And for a 2-story build, they had a slab that was maybe 6 inches. Oh, he was getting ripped, and mold was everywhere. And I says, look, they had made a lot of mistakes. And I said, hey, we could fix this, but really, you way better just to destroy it, tear it all down. And he ended up tearing down $100,000, flushing that $100,000 down the toilet, and we started from scratch.
Because your foundation is so important.
Foundation is the most important
thing.
There's
no consistency in the strength of the concrete, right? Yeah. Because of how they do the pours, how they do the mixing and the pouring.
In this case, it was really horrible. Now, here's a great question. I'm going to come through here and answer some questions. Eduardo says that the real estate agent in Costa Rica, some buy property, a house from an old Tico for 10 grand, 20 grand, turn around and sell it to a first-time gringo for 35, 60,000 or more, okay? And that's very true, okay? That does happen. And unfortunately, like I said, I think in our last live, Ticos are just trying to make a few bucks off of you, but gringos. And most of the time you get a gringo realtor, and you're thinking you can trust him. Well, gringos, unfortunately, a gringo that's here, they know you don't know better. And they're like, well, I know this guy doesn't know the value of property. And so they will convince you. They will buddy up you. And so gringos will intentionally rip you off. So you want to be so very careful. Just buyer beware. I'm not saying everybody. Be very, very careful when dealing with anybody, okay?
Just don't be too trusting, too naive. Thinking that the law is going to protect you, because it won't.
The law is not going to protect you, okay? And Randy says, one key rule in business is buyer beware. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. But there are cases you can find some phenomenal deals because people come here, they buy, and then they're just cutting their losses and leaving. So you can find some phenomenal fireside deals, right? Fire sales, okay?
Even with like old forms, because as the people, like I was talking about earlier, these people get older and they either pass away or they have to move in with family elsewhere. And the younger generations, they don't want to go work these farms. They don't want all that land. They're wanting to live in the city or close to the city. They're wanting to have, jobs that they can make more money at, and they don't want to farm. So sometimes you can get a really good deal on a family farm. Unfortunate for the family, but it's just the kids just don't want it.
Yeah. Yeah. Today, everything is changing. Everything is changing. And no matter where you're at in the country, young kids, all they want to do is be on their cell phone. Okay. Now I'm coming through here and I'm taking a look, I think this is a funny comment right here. We was talking about putting up a gym, and Pig's Pig says Alan looks like he could wrestle a pig. I've never wrestled a pig, but I'm a Cajun from South Louisiana. I like wrestling alligators. Yeah. You ain't heard about them Cajuns wrestling alligators?
That's what happens when you fall off your P-row.
That's right. I bet you most people don't know what a P-row is.
Probably not. And I guess you fall out of it, not off of it.
No, you fall out of it, or you sink that thing. A P-row is a Cajun-style canoe, and it's tiny, okay? Anyway.
It's almost like, what's the things that you go down, whitewater rafting with
those
little,
kayak.
Kayak, yeah.
So I'm coming through here, and I'm just checking out
Oh, look at Uncle Chico.
Where at?
He's saying hello from Yukon territory.
Uncle Chico from the Yukon territory. Hey, Uncle Chico. Now, Uncle Chico, if I remember right, Uncle Chico is a Tico who is living in the United States or wherever. And anyway, watches the channel so he can learn more about his own country, and because things change. So correct me if I'm wrong there, Uncle Chico. Now, Bob asked a question right here and says, would you consider a property that has been for sale for over a year without a price reduction insulting or foolish to make an offer for more than $100,000 less of asking price? Okay, here's what I try to tell people, Bob. That's a very good question. A lot of times there's properties for sale all the time. Ticos are waiting for some dumb gringo to come give them too much money because they don't know that they know you don't know any better. So here's what I do. Okay, when I'm looking for a piece of property, and here's what I would suggest. If you find a piece of property you like, okay, then because a lot of times it's not uncommon that a Tico will put more than twice the asking price. Okay, in other words, if he's got a piece of property that's really worth $50,000, he'll ask $100,000. If it's really worth $200,000, he'll ask $400,000. So a lot of times you can just simply right off the bat, if you like it, say, hey, give them half, offer them half, and then you can begin the negotiation process. Okay.
Yeah, now that's kind of customary that they just like to do that.
They're looking to haggle, and they're going to start way high.
You keep hitting and the whole thing.
So here's what I say: when you find a piece of property you're serious about, then go up to that person and say, look, I like your property. I'm looking at 2 or 3 different properties. I found 3 properties that I like, but I really kind of like your property. So I tell you what, I'm going to offer you $100,000 for your piece of property. He immediately is going to say, no, I'll never sell it for that. And say, okay, well, here's my telephone number. Give him your card. Here's my telephone number in case you change your mind. But I'm going to go and talk to the other guy, and I'm going to start working a deal with him. Give him about a week or 2 weeks, and I promise you, within a couple of weeks, in his mind, he's like, well, man, if I take that money, I could buy this and I could buy that. He's already spent all that money in his mind, okay? And then he's going to call you back, okay? If he doesn't call you back, well, in about 2 to 3 weeks, call him back and say, hey, I'm getting ready to buy this other piece of property, but I thought I would check with you just in case you changed your mind. If he's hard-headed and hadn't changed his mind, walk away and go to another piece of property. But yeah.
And you don't want to short someone, of course, but you also don't want to overpay by a whole bunch. You know, I understand what you're saying. You don't want to insult someone by offering them too little, but it's kind of just the custom here that we've learned. They just ask way more because the haggling is just normal, even over cucumber and broccoli. Sometimes, you know, that goes on. But I don't think it's unusual for a property to be for sale for over a year. We've seen properties that pretty much been for sale since we got here.
Oh yeah,
there's one that went from $1.5 million down to 750,000 US dollars,
and they keep coming down. And someone's going to buy.
It's still for sale. And
you know, and we were talking about, hey, if you happen to buy early on, you first get here, you know, maybe you can Airbnb it if you don't like it. And Sarong says, hey, there are so many Airbnbs these days, and many places not as booked as expected. And you do have a lot of competition. Now, keep in mind, the majority of your competition are Ticos, and the house just barely is very minimal, doesn't have much in it. So if you're going to have an Airbnb, you cannot do it like the Ticos. I'm not saying the Tico's doing it wrong. A Tico sets up an Airbnb. He's setting it up better than his own house, but his own house has the basic bare minimum. And that's normal. That's normal for them. But Americans or most people, they expect an Airbnb to have coffee in a coffee pot, and most Ticos don't. So if you do an Airbnb,
Airbnb, they all have it in their house.
Yeah. If you in an Airbnb, if you do it right and you know how to market it, you can make money. But it does matter on location. Okay. And now location does not matter if you're Airbnb it for hardly nothing. But you want to make money. You don't want to go through all that hassle. If you want to make money, you do have to be in a good location. So I'm glad you brought that up, Strong. Okay?
I mean, we usually try to get a good deal. You know, we're not paying high dollar because we're just staying overnight to catch the plane the next day, or just a place to lay our head. And so we've seen a lot of like under $100 a night, and they'll have a coffee pot, no coffee.
No coffee.
What?
No coffee?
There's just no place in the bathroom to hang your towel, to put your clean clothes.
Yeah.
So if you did simple little tweaks like that, you could maybe be okay.
Orly's asked the question, says, well, what about just buying land and building your own house and shipping containers? Absolutely, you can do that. You know, I have this land right here, and this is similar to a shipping container, except I'm not restrained to that size. So this here is 8 foot by about 9 foot, okay, and 32 foot long. Now, with a shipping container, and I built it so it was 8 foot inside, okay, and a shipping container is 8 foot on the outside, and then by the time you put walls and all that. So anyway, my point is, yeah, you could absolutely do a shipping container if you know how to do it. Matter of fact, you can buy a piece of property, you can build your own house, be your own contractor, and would have no problem whatsoever. And you could start out building something small, because if you build something small, in many cases, you don't have to have a permit. So what you want to do is you go to a town and you find out from the town municipality,
minimal structure.
What's the minimal size I can build without a permit? They'll say, okay, 200 square meters or whatever that is, 45 square meters, whatever. And then you could build that, have something to live in, and then expand. And you start out without even having a permit and have a place to live. Okay. So yeah, you absolutely could just buy a piece of property. That's what, we didn't buy this property. We've leased this property for 99 years. Okay. And anyway, a different deal. Anyhow, but yeah, that's really a good idea. And you can do that and save a lot of money.
Yeah. The climate is great for, you don't have to have insulation. You can have open air, so.
And so I'm looking through here just to, now another thing to consider, Strong says, hey, be careful with flooding. In most places, you won't have to worry about flooding if you're in the mountains, but keep in mind that sometimes it can flood in the mountains because a lot of people are building on level spots. So you want to make sure that there's drainage. When I go and inspect a property, I inspect the property to make sure where's the drainage is at. Are you going to need retaining walls? If it has retaining walls already, do those retaining walls drain, or did they build a huge dam? Okay, so there's a lot of things to consider. Most places, like we're in the mountains, it'll never flood where we're at, but we're very close to the river, and boy, those rivers do get full. And so when those rivers get full, is it possible that we could have a landslide on our property? Well, where I'm at, not going to happen. But it's important to have someone that knows what he's talking about so that you can check that out, somebody with experience, to make sure you don't make that mistake.
Yes, because if it's in the middle of dry season, what looks like maybe it's all dried up or it's just a trickle, that same little nothing can turn into a massive body of flowing river water in the rainy season. And you also don't want to buy below cattle fields, like where people have cows grazing, whatever, on the mountainside, because that weakens the land. And so that tends to be,
there's a lot
if your
of
house
things
is
that you
built
need
at the
to
bottom
consider.
of that, you could have a landslide. What you laughing at? Show me.
All right. So milk is good for the body. Yeah. And you're like, come on, man, that don't look like no Allen's apple juice. And JR is like, you drinking milk?
Now you know he ain't drinking pure plain milk.
Now, Rebecca told me about this. This is a white Russian. It's cold over here, so I didn't feel like getting me my normal apple juice, so I just got a white Russian.
Yeah, we're having a very chilly day today. No sun.
I don't know what's going on with this weather, but man,
it's supposed to be sunny season.
We haven't had sun in about 4 days. Man, so the generator's running in the background. It's crazy. All right. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. Let me take a look. Now, JR put a comment here that I can 100% agree on. He says, Costa Rica is the wild, wild west, and everyone wants to rip you off, from realtors to contractors. He says, trust me, I've been there for over 2 years, and those smiles are not free. You are absolutely right. I'm your friend. I never cheat you. I'll cheat you right. You got to be careful. And look,
a naive, trusting person has a hard time. They're going to learn some life lessons.
I have lost a lot of money. And just to give you a roundabout, and I'm not bragging at all. But since I've been in Costa Rica for 11 years, if I calculate, I have lost probably over $100,000. Okay. And it's not just, anyway. And it's because I trusted people I shouldn't have trusted. And that's one of the biggest reasons I do this YouTube channel. Okay. So, Saron says, hey, and look, if you are going to be building, you better be on site. If you're not on site, you better hire someone to be on site for you, and it better be somebody you trust, like myself. I'll be a building and grounds inspector. I don't do it a whole lot. It's very detailed, but you better make sure that you're on site or have a buildings and grounds inspector doing photos and videos and communicating with you on a regular basis. Because if you don't, man, the mistakes that are there. And I stopped this last build on a lot of mistakes. So be very, very careful.
And you love to do that kind of stuff, but you really you don't have the time.
I love to do it. I really do.
You keep talking as if that's something you would actually do.
And I try to say, look, I don't sell my services. I'm very, very busy out here. But I love it, and I love to tell you what to look out for, okay? Okay. Yeah, and Riff Raff says, I was going to ask you if you're from Louisiana. That accent is thick. You think that's thick, man? I've been away from Louisiana a long time.
You haven't lost it, though.
Okay, so, yeah, see, and Doug has been in Costa Rica. It goes back and forth to Costa Rica a whole lot. He says, beware of gringos selling land or pre-selling a development. They'll screw you worse than a Tico will. And I'm seeing a lot of comments about people are in agreement that gringos will rip you off big time. It's intentional, okay? Be very, very careful. Now, oh, wait a minute. I saw a comment that I wanted to Sarong asked the question. It says, even a lot of Ticos won't rent to another Tico because it's hard to get them out. Even if they have a contract with them, they're not honoring their end. So, and she actually, that's very true.
We have heard that, yeah.
Now, she actually asked a question here, and well, I can't. I'm not going to waste time looking for it. But be very, very careful whenever you're looking for property in Costa Rica. Let's just say, for example, it's a large piece of property. Maybe it's 4 or 5 hectares. You need to make sure that you either pay somebody to go and inspect that property, or you need to inspect the entire property. I don't care how big it is, because you might have squatters on there. If you have squatters on your property, let's say that you buy even 1 hectare, and off in one corner you find out a squatter is on your property, you might not ever get them off. Costa Rica has laws on squatters that, you know, once they're there and they're there a certain amount of time, they put up a fence. Maybe they have a little garden. Well, it's theirs. It is almost theirs. You'll have a hard time getting them off. So you want to be very, very, very careful about squatters on your property. So you never want to leave your property without having someone house sit your property. So those are some very important things you need to be very, very aware of.
Yeah,
okay?
and another thing that could cause issues with neighbors, Costa Rica doesn't have trash pickup as common as like we're used to in the United States. They have it in most of the cities and small towns, but when you start getting outside of town, there's no trash pickup. So it's not uncommon for a neighbor to just throw their trash on a piece of property that's away from their house that could end up being on your property that you're buying. And, you know, that could.
So you do have to be careful, because a lot of times they just don't care about that. Hey, they dumping their trash. Now, JR asked a great question. Do banks in Costa Rica give mortgages to gringos? Very, very difficult. Some banks are coming around, but it's very, very, very difficult. If you buy property in Costa Rica, 9 times out of 10, you're going to pay cash for that piece of property. You sometimes can find owner financing, and if you find owner financing, you're going to pay a lot more for it, but you're going to put you're probably most of the time going to put 50% down while working out terms with the owner. Okay, there are some other places that you got to be careful of, but you know, there's people that have money here that are loaning money, and they've got in a business and they're pretty much loan sharks. Interest rates are very high, but sometimes sometimes it's worth it depending on your situation. Most cases, if you're in Costa Rica, look, I saw this today. I'm looking at that piece of property, and this guy says, "Man, I'll fly down and give you $60,000 cash." Dude, giving $60,000 cash means nothing, because everybody gives cash. When you're buying property in Costa Rica, the majority of the time you're going to pay cash because there is no financing. There are a few little places, very, very, very difficult to find somebody who's going to finance.
Sometimes owners, for sale by owner, they'll work out a deal.
Yeah.
A lease to own or something like that.
You know, you'll have some private mortgage bankers out there. Interest rates are high, but you got to be careful, okay? Be very, very careful. You know, one of the most important things about buying property in the mountains is be very careful that it could a possible landslide. Yeah. Very possible landslide.
Just remember, the difference between rainy season and dry season, it's night and day. I mean, you could have a very easy driveway, and in rainy season, it's impassable, and you know, so you would require thousands of dollars to get.
And that's why it's important to have someone inspect that property. Or someone in local that you trust to say, hey, because you can be driving there this time of the year where it's normally hot and it's great, but in the rainy season you got a river that you got to, and it's very, very different. Here's something you're gonna probably find hard to believe: the majority of landslides, write this down, the majority of landslides happen because of the locals in the community.
Deforestation.
They deforest it. They put cattle on it. All of a sudden, it's holding water. Landslide. Now, some landslides just happen, okay? But on my road, almost every single landslide on my driveway, and it's a mile driveway, happens because of the locals that are on either side. They've cleared it to put gardens. So we have landslide after landslide that would not happen if there was forest there. Okay, so it's very important that you understand how landslides occur, why they occur, and what you can do to stop that. Okay, so here's a question that Orly asked. This might be a stupid question. No question is stupid. But do you need TICO visa or legal status, permanent resident to buy property? No. Anybody can buy property in Costa Rica. You just want to be very, very careful that you don't get conned when buying the property. So you want to have a good attorney. There's a link in the description, so you can contact Christina with Blue Zone Legal to make sure you do your due diligence, make sure the proper person owns it, make sure it actually has a title. Because look, there's a lot of property out there that people are selling. You can buy property that has no title. And if you want to take that risk, you can. A lot of locals buy untitled property. And you end up getting a deed, okay? But stop and think. You can buy untitled property. I would. But the problem is you might not ever be able to resell it. Because, very few people are willing to take a risk of buying untitled property. So there's untitled property. You can buy it. And it's a lot cheaper. But if you don't like it, well, you're in trouble, right?
And there's constantly new laws. The older properties are grandfathered in, but if you're going to be building, or a new build would be subject to the new laws. Things like you can't build within a certain radius of the natural water distributions. What is it called? Aquifers.
Aquifers. Or are you talking about
the wells that they use, the aquifers, the natural aquifers?
Oh, you talking about artesian wells, or
that you can't build.
Oh, yeah, there's aquifers on the land, and you can't build within certain.
So the country has wells set up all over, and older properties, older buildings are grandfathered in, but new construction is subject to a radius. You cannot build within a certain radius.
So far from that aquifer, so that you don't disrupt the aquifer and contaminate the aquifer that's there. Okay, and which then is a well in there that they're using to supply water to the community. Okay, so all right, I can't believe that we are over an hour already, but I'm gonna answer this question that Adam said. So Adam says, how do building materials cost compared to elsewhere in the world? In the UK, now you might as well drop your pants before even entering the store. Now in Costa Rica, lumber went high everywhere, but the majority of the building in Costa Rica is done with cement. I mean, you can build a cement house cheap. Okay, I know someone personally who built a house and it was under $80,000 and turned out to be a beautiful little place. $80,000 for a cement house, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, beautiful little old place. $80,000, concrete place, concrete cement place. Okay.
Lots of windows.
Nothing fancy, lots of windows. So you can build very cheap. You really can. Now, if you're going to build with wood, be very, very careful because termites are bad in Costa Rica. If you're way up here where I'm at, you don't have to worry about termites. But if you're in an area that it's very humid, you do have to worry about mold. So lots of things that you've got to really think about, okay? So anyway, hey, now, I should say this because Sarong brought that in. Building costs are more expensive. You're not going to build I was going to say you're not going to build a house cheaper than you would in the United States. Yes, you will, because labor is very, 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 very cheap. The house that a personal friend of mine, concrete house, $80,000. Was it perfect? No. It's a beautiful little old place, but I can promise you that the $80,000 he built that house on, if he would have built that same house in the United States, $200,000. $200,000 if he'd have built that same house in the United States, okay? Because it would have cost more. He would have had inflation. He would have so much more. But that same house here, $80,000, and I say he got a phenomenal deal. So there are a lot of things that just makes a humongous difference because you're not going to need nearly as much. But hey, it is expensive. Materials are expensive. Rick says, well, what do you think about prefab houses? Lots of concrete prefab houses. If you want to build a house really fast, concrete prefab house You can have a house up 2 weeks, 30 days tops, depending on how big it is. So a prefab house is great. The government gives away these prefab houses to the very, very poor locals. Okay, and it's usually just a little bitty 2-bedroom house, no ceiling or anything. And so, look, you can get these very, very, very cheap. So, hey, we are way over time, but I've had a lot of fun. And I do want to wish you all a happy, happy New Year's. I really believe that 2025 is going to be awesome. Rebecca has talked way too much on this live. What do you think, Rebecca?
What are you talking about?
So, hey, we are definitely excited for all of you folks. Hey, look, you know, we don't have any product and services to sell. We give everything away for free. But look, time is money. If you want to schedule a phone consultation, you're certainly welcome to do that. That does cost you money. But you can join our members only community. $10 a month. Wow, 33 cents a day. Save thousands upon thousands of dollars in our members only community. And I'm in there answering questions all the time. So have fun with us in the members only community. It's a great way to say thank you. We have a lot of members in the members only community, and they're never active. I wish they would, but we don't have a Patreon or anything like that. And they really do it just a way to express their gratitude, thanks, appreciation for all the free information we do give. So, hey, thank you, folks. We hope you have an awesome,
I'm laughing at what Eduardo said to the.
He said, Eduardo, happy New Year's to all Costa Rica school students. That's at you guys. And hey, Adam says, thank you. We're finally flying on 14 January. We'll book our call this week. Happy New Year's. Hey, Randy, he said he loves community. He's in there posting. Randy's very, very helpful inside the community. So Ron's Happy New Year. So Happy New Year's to everybody. So glad that you're here. Can't wait to see you next week. Remember, next Sunday is the first Sunday of the month. Every first Sunday of the month, this is Rebecca's idea, strictly Q&A. So whatever questions you have for us, I don't care what it is. You want to talk about prostitutes, drugs, whatever. If you want to talk about gay people, LGBTQ, I don't care. There's no topic off limits. You just want to find out good information about Costa Rica. You want to talk about turtle legs. You want to talk about, hey, we'll talk about anything and answer any question you have on the first Sunday of every month. And that happens to be next Sunday. We'll see you next Sunday. Happy New Year's. Have a great one.
Happy New Year.
Show starts every Sunday at 4 o'clock Costa Rica time.